So now we are independent in the terms of we can show on a commercial machine, outdated, of course, but we can show that it works. And then that's the precondition to sit down and discuss how we can get access to the source code of the S19, S21, maybe S23, with the companies whose main business is to develop aftermarket control boards for these machines.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Francesco Gardin. He's the CEO of Quantum Blockchain Technologies. Francesco, very good to speak with you. Could you start by reminding us what's the difference between this software version of the AI Oracle and the original hardware version?
Okay, good morning, Stephen. It looks like this is becoming a podcast. I mean, QBT podcast. Okay, so just to remind where we are, we originally started with the method C version of the Oracle in hardware, and this was announced at the beginning of last year. There was a patent filed for this and an FPGA implementation. However, we felt that we could also use the same technology and have it running rather than on the chip, which means that you have to build a chip, an ASIC, with the Oracle implemented in hardware. We could relax some of the constraints and have it running on the operating system. That was a big bet because there was no certainty. Running on the operating system of the mining rig means that you have less information if you want to be able to generate jobs fast enough for the ASIC. And that's the direction we took, and that's where we got very good results. And now the next step is to have it running on real machines, and the ASIC, the mining rig which we received from the first of the three potential partners is exactly for this purpose. However, we did also something in parallel, which I can go on and explain if you want. And is basically we were back in mid of 2025 after the Bitcoin 2025 event in Las Vegas. We met a lot of companies, or actually there are 3 or 4 or 5, call it 5 companies, who have developed a version of the software for the control board so that you can buy a mining rig from the main supplier, which is, Bitmain, and replace the control board and run your own software, which can be more efficient because of some optimization that these companies perform, mainly hardware optimization in terms of clock rate, in terms of voltage. But when we came to the point, and that was in the second half of 2025, of discussions, they didn't want to share their source code because to implement Oracle on the operating system, we need the source code. And they said, okay, you give us your source code. And we say, impossible. I mean, this is industrial secret. And so this dance went on for quite a long time. And at that point, we decided that we had to do something. Now, doing something means that you either develop your operating system from scratch and you design your control board, but that's not what we wanted to do because our focus is our methods. And so we decided to identify a machine, an old machine, because the S9 is a pretty old machine that you can buy for like £100 online, but was the last machine for which there was the source code, both of the operating system and the firmware of the FPGA. And we decided that we wanted to go ahead because that was a very important element of in demonstrating to the big miners of what the method could do. And that's why we started back in August 2025 this project. We found a very experienced FPGA programmer, and then now we finally have full control of this system, which is still a few thousand lines of Rust code, which is not one of the easiest codes, and the firmware of the FPGA.
I think you've partially answered this, but why choose an Antminer S9 for the AI Oracle test when it's no longer used as a competitive miner?
Yeah, because that was the only option. And even if we now want to go and try to port our method on the S19, S21, S23, there is no way that we can get the source code of these machines because the few companies who have done their own proprietary or aftermarket control boards wouldn't share the software. However, if we as few miners ask us to do, go to a big miner and say, okay, this is the performance, then these companies would be inclined, the aftermarket control boards would be inclined to have a deal because there is a customer ready to pay for it. And so this is the main reason. So now we are independent in the terms of we can show on a commercial machine, outdated, of course, but we can show that it works. And then that's the precondition to sit down and discuss how we can get access to the source code of the S19, S21, maybe S23, with the companies whose main business is to develop aftermarket control boards for these machines.
Francesco, how long do you expect this new commercial test to last before you can announce any results?
Okay, so for the S9, for example, which goes in parallel with the other mining rig from the ASIC manufacturer, we are now at the stage where we are collecting data because each ASIC is different from any other ASIC. So the ASICs, which is the BM1387 on these machines, is totally different from the ASIC of the ASIC manufacturer that now we're working with. And so we have to collect this data because our neural networks need to understand the behavior of these ASICs. Of course, SHA-256 is the same function, is implemented, but there are many ways to roll the different variables of the header, and this is important for our neural network to understand this. And so once we finish this phase of data collection, in parallel, we are also implementing the Oracle on this control board, which has enough computing power and enough memory because we need at least 50 megabytes on memory to run it. And so once these two parts of the project are completed, and we're talking about weeks, then we will start to test the Oracle live.
Francesco, I hope you'll keep us updated with progress on that. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much, Stephen, as usual.
Francesco Gardin, the CEO of Quantum Blockchain Technologies.